University is he goes to get teachings on love and compassion to Indonesia. So he makes a perilous 13-month journey where his life is in danger. And then he goes to meet his teacher there, Thangpa, from whom he gets teachings on compassion. He spends full 12 years. And he comes back to India. And he's, as I say, very eminent scholar, vice chancellor of a university, all these things. And then he goes to Tibet at the age of 60. So imagine, at 60, and we are talking 11th century, in those days as a Bengali born, he goes to Tibet, and he then spends 12 years and passes away there. And he goes there really to benefit the beings. Look at the cosmopolitanism. Today we say no immigration, this one is brown, this one is this region, that region, all this, and this is going on at that time, right? Today I'm putting him up because these teachings and 8 verses of mind training is part of a very famous genre of teachings called Lojong. Lo is mind intelligent, and Jong has multiple meanings: training, transformation, cultivation, familiarization. So basically, Lojong is basically mind training, mind transformation. And these teachings are associated with, as the Tibetans call him, Geshe. And he is really the start. So after he passes away, next slide please. After he goes to Tibet, so he meets Arya Tara. There's a beautiful story that he did go there, and he's circumambulating and he hears these tinkling bells, and then he sees an old lady, and he looks and the old lady says to him that you are not recognizing your mother of many lives. And it is actually Arya Tara. And Arya Tara tells him that yes, you must go to Tibet. But in going to Tibet, your life will be shortened, but you will benefit many ways. And also there you will meet your teacher, your student, your heart disciple, Thangpa, of many, many lifetimes. And so he meets Dr. Gelbe, who is a layman, great practitioner. By some accounts, he's an emanation of Cherish, the Buddha of compassion. And then they have a lifelong connection. So after Jogo Latisha passes away, Bronton founds the Kadamba school. And Lojong teachings are the Kadamba school teachings. Next slide, please. So these images are all taken from Root Institute in Bodh set up by the late Captain Langri. So here is the author of our text today, Geshe Thangpa. And he was renowned as the tearful Geshe because he was always crying. And he was not crying for himself, but he was crying for others. So this is the author of today's text. Next slide, please. And then there is Geshe Chekova, who's also part of these Kadamba scholars. His text is very famous, 7-point mind training. And he, when he, hears, he is a great student and he's done a lot of studies and everything, and he still feels something is missing. And he comes across 2 lines from 8 verses of training the mind. And then he goes looking for the teacher who has written these lines. And when he actually meets with, he realizes that Geshe Thangpa is no more. But he meets students of his who then give these teachings to him. And Geshe Chekova, 7-point mind training is also very famous in this genre of Lojong, of which, as I'm saying, 8 verses of training the mind is very important. 8 verses of training the mind is something that His Holiness the Dalai Lama recites every day, and that can give us an indication उसका क्या. तो मैं कह रही थी ये कदम्बा मास्टर्स जो थे ये बहुत इनका लिनेज ऐसा था कि पहले वो बंगाली मास्टर जो लतीशा वो 11वीं सेंचुरी में उस टाइम में पहले इंडोनेशिया जाते हैं ये टीचिंग्स लेने के लिए. वहाँ बहुत कठिन रास्ता 13 महीने का उसमें मरने का भी रिस्क है. फिर हम वो वहाँ पहुँच के 12 साल करते हैं अपने टीचर के साथ चले का. और उनका ऐसे था जो मुझे पहले दिशा का टीचर 150 से ऊपर थे, पर फिर पूरे जिंदगी में जब वो टीचर का नाम सुनते थे उनके आंसू बहते थे, क्योंकि उनसे उनको महाकरुणा का टीचिंग मिला। सो उनमें से ये सब लिनेज है टीचिंग्स का। जो ऑथर जो प्रीवियस फोटो वो इस टीचिंग 8 वर्सेस ऑफ माइंड रीडिंग के ऑथर थे, और इनका भी बहुत फेमस टेक्स्ट है 7 पॉइंट माइंड ट्रेनिंग के जो जॉनर के अंदर। तो ये तो हुए ये सब कदम टीचर्स। तो जैसे मैं कह रही थी कि आज जब मेरे को ये इन्विटेशन मिला, वैसे तो मैं 8 वर्स को खत्म कर सकती हूँ लंच के पहले, पर ये बात ये है कि ये 8 छोटे से वर्स है, पर इनमें जो टीचिंग है ये जैसे मैं कह रही हूँ जो महाकरुणा का बहुत हाई लेवल प्रैक्टिस के ऊपर है। तो अगर मैं आपको सीधा उसके ऊपर बातचीत करती तो शायद आप लंच के लिए रहते। तो मैंने सोचा कि मैं इसका थोड़ा बैकग्राउंड दूं और बाकी तो ये आज की जो टीचिंग्स है 3 सेशंस हैं हमारे। तो जैसे मैंने प्लानिंग की है कि पहले क्योंकि मेरे को जानकारी आई संजुक्ता जी टेलर जी से और फिर कि यहाँ मिक्स्ड ऑडियंस है, कई बौद्ध धर्म से जुड़े हुए हैं। अम्बेडकर जी का बहुत ग्रेट भी है, मैं उनकी बात करूँगी। तो उनसे जुड़े हुए हैं। Some people are familiar with the teaching, some people are old students, some people are newly coming with no background. So the day is divided into 3 sessions. So the first session will be setting up the context and the background, which I feel. So is it all? Yeah. So then the first will be setting the context for us for some of this. The next session after lunch will be on the 8 verses of mind reading and some further context. And then I hope the final session we will do one of the methods of bodhicitta. Because these teachings are also centrally related to bodhicitta and in particular equalizing and exchanging self another method. So that's the plan for the day. Next slide, please. So now, the first is the 4 seals. And although these are classically said to be the seals of the Buddha's teachings, actually these seals can just be the seals of things that we know intellectually and hopefully later at a deeper level. So what are these 4 seals? So the 4 seals, we begin with the first, which is that all composite things are impermanent. In Tibetan, impermanence is Thangpa. What is the understanding of impermanent is not something that lasts for a short time, but rather it is something that is undergoing momentary change. So impermanent in this tradition is something that is undergoing momentary change. So if we think about it, even all of us, even since this morning, we have undergone change. Since you got up this morning, we had breakfast, we got ready, we are constantly undergoing change. And not just we, but all composite phenomena. What is composite phenomena? It is literally anything which has parts. These can be either material, spatial, directional parts, or they can be parts in time. So, पहला teaching is कि all composite things are impermanent. हर चीज जो जिसकी parts हैं, वो स्थिर नहीं रहता. वो एकदम से बदल रहा है, moment. This is the definition of impermanent phenomena. And there are 2 kinds of impermanence. There is gross impermanence, which is when the continuum of something comes to an end. So we have all lost loved ones near and dear. The continuum has come to an end. They have passed away. Other kinds of gross impermanence is like the year 2024 has finished. It is continuum has come to an end. So that gross impermanence is only possible because of subtle impermanence. And subtle impermanence is our momentary change. Now, this is something that we know intellectually. Of course, all of us in this room, ये हम वैसे intellectually तो जानते हैं कि हर चीज impermanence की जानकारी है. हम सब जानते हैं कि जब हम जन्म लेंगे तो हम मरेंगे भी, और हम सब जानते हैं कि हम बूढ़े भी होंगे और बीमारी भी होगी और ये सब. पर ये हमारी जानकारी थोड़ी इंटेलेक्चुअल लेवल में है. हम इसको डीपर लेवल में कितना अपना पाते हैं ये क्वेश्चनेबल है. So we know this intellectually. To what degree we are able to absorb it at a deeper level? Do I really think when I'm coming here today that this may be our first and last meeting? No, because I'm planning. Next time I come to Bombay, then it's so nice to stay with Hena and Gupta and Singh, and then how I will do this, that. And I know impermanence, but I'm not absorbed the implications of it. And likewise, so this is one type of ignorance that we harbor, seeing things that are impermanent as permanent, right? And when we are confronted with impermanence, we feel so shocked. Something happens like an earthquake or somebody dies before their time, we are shocked. Why are we shocked? Because although we know this intellectually, we have not absorbed it at a deeper level. So this is the first thing. The second thing is all contaminated things are of the nature of suffering. So, to make you all laugh, His Holiness said once in 1970s he started traveling to the West. Oh, and I want to say one more thing about impermanence. That on impermanence, my teachers have been parents. Because I have some connection to them that I am in touch with a lot of younger Tibetans, older Tibetans in Burma, outside Burma. And when I see their situation as refugees, as separated, as sometimes stacking, like young Tibetans, they are able to pack up their lives of 3-5 years in one small box, carton, and they don't know what's coming next. And they are okay. And they are okay because I think they have their life experience has taught them to deal with this in a way that many of us have never confronted. So therefore, my teaching on impermanence is Tibetan and youngsters as well, third generation and all that. So the second theme, all contaminated things are of the nature of suffering. Now to make a joke here, when His Holiness first went to the West in the 1970s, then he came back. He said, "Don't talk too much about suffering straight away." in the audiences there, because in a way, when I come from a development perspective, economics, in the advanced countries, the external conditions are so controlled that we feel somehow, again, there's no impermanence and there's no, it's all in our control, right? You don't even really much see death unless you're working in the medical profession or caring or palliative care or some professionally, right? Even if somebody close by dies, they quickly clean up and it's gone, right? Accidents. Places like Switzerland and all, you will have to go searching. And so, His Holiness said this. So today I'm being really extra courageous to bring right up this, because Mumbai is also a bit like advanced, and maybe you're thinking, what is this lady talking about here? This swimming pool, beautiful, lovely, sunny day, and everything is going so good, and she's talking about something early in the morning. So, but the sea is contaminated by what? I'm going to go into that, but when we talk about contamination, the final contaminations is the afflictions or the mental defilements, of which the most ground mastermind is ignorance. And in particular, self-grasping ignorance. That is a particular kind of ignorance because there are many levels of ignorance. As I said, even seeing impermanent things as permanent. My dog is going to live forever, my flat is going to last forever, my good situation is going to last forever, my youth will certainly last forever. Today is the age when we are doing all this bioindefinite research that I can live 2000 years, all the big tech um, owners, that they feel they will defy death. So these are all thinking that impermanent is permanent. That is also ignorance. But the ignorance that I'm talking about as contamination is the final ground of self-love ignorance, and we will be talking a lot about that today. But things are of the nature of suffering, and this is something very, very profound, and that I will have to bring up, because otherwise, if I went straight into the 8 verses of training the mind, you would send a message to Menda Jamde Green Center and ask them never to invite me again. Because the verses that they talk about, as I say, you will think, what is this lady talking about? So we will come back to suffering. All phenomena of the nature of emptiness and selflessness. This is really the heart of what sets apart the Buddha's teachings from other philosophies. Why would I, as somebody who is going along, born in a secular liberal family, and speeding along, then I love academia, I love critical thinking, and I am trained in that from the age of 21 to 34 in also another country, and one of the best universities in the world from which I got a lot. And then why would I ever end up in such a where I find myself today? It's because this philosophy is absolutely captivating. It has just captured my heart. And why? Because the Buddha's teachings are not all religious traditions, and even non-religious people like Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins. There are very good people who are also agnostic. Atheists, that is a totally valid position in the age of science, post-enlightenment. So I would say, and many of my own friends, by the way, who are in academia, they are activists, they are very, very good people. They don't have belief per se in religion or any sort of, yet they have many ethics and qualities at very, very high levels. So I would say that mostly all the ethics that are going to come up today, these are taught in all religions and also non-religious, sphere. But what sets apart the Buddha's teaching is the teaching on emptiness. And this is something that he never actually invented, it is what he discovered. This reality was there before the Buddha ever came, Buddha Shakyamuni, it will exist after all the 3,000 Buddhas have passed, it will be there. But he discovered it, and this is something that today modern physics, with so many 2,500 years later, it is coming to discover some things about ontology that Buddha Shakyamuni came up without all that instrumentation 2,500 years ago. So this is also something we will go into more. And then if we are able to come out of this, transcending sorrow is peace, because here the context is that the final thing, people ask me, you ordained last year, what did you give up? What do you miss? Because of course, till age 50, I have had a regular life, I have had experienced all things. And if I share with you, actually, I have not given up something in ordaining, actually, I gave freedom. And I really say that as somebody who has, in one-to-one, I'm happy to take questions, but I bring that perspective, so this was my contribution when I was thinking that, rather than a great master, you got me today, sorry. But then I can talk about some of this, which they may not have had the sort of. So I gained freedom. And why did I gain freedom? Because we will see that finally here, it is not about renouncing your good things of life, your material comforts, your pleasures, your senses, this and that, all this, no problem. I'm also trained in economics and I'm a pragmatist. If I sat here today before you in the 21st century and said, please give up everything and, now after this today, renounce this, renounce that, renounce this, renounce. Frankly, even I wouldn't be here. Because I'm not the kind of person who can be persuaded by, like my students tell me that, ma'am, this is okay, but we are not Mother Teresa, we are not His Holiness, we are not Archbishop, And I agree with their philosophy that to make moral arguments and to think about good and bad and, value judgments is something that they are not very able to. And personally, I myself am not very much persuaded. But I am persuaded by the logic of this philosophy. And what we are really talking about giving up here is our ignorance and our foundational self-grasping ignorance. And if we are able to do that, the freedom that we have is going to be something that is peace, at the most fundamental kind of level. And peace, I'm sorry, the English word sometimes doesn't give the full connotation, but it is actually going to give fearlessness and further to that, maybe perhaps infinite happiness. So that also we will come back to. Next slide, please. Now, suffering. So now you are going to tell me, as I said. So first, there are three kinds of suffering in this philosophy that they identify. So the first suffering we all know about, we experience it, we can identify, we just suffering. There are young ones in this audience, maybe you have right now not experienced, but these are things that as you get older, you will have experienced really manifest suffering. It can be sickness, it can be poverty, it can be losing your dear ones, it can be all those. We all recognize this as suffering, we identify, we experience, and we see. So easy. The next, suffering of change. This is all mundane happiness. All our regular happiness on a day-to-day level. Be it a good meal, be it a good relationship, all those things, we can talk about it as suffering of change. Now you will ask me two questions. That number one, why is it suffering? And here I am directly, like I'm saying, because this is really something that Venerable Geshe, I think, through his reflections, he puts it as like bait. Mundane happiness is like bait. The bait that we dangle in front of fish, or like if a mouse comes in your house and you put a little cheese in a trap, that is bait. Right? So what are the qualities of bait? For something to be bait, it should be delicious. It should be something very attractive, because otherwise the fish or the mouse is not going to come there. And secondly, it should have a hook at the back. So it should be something that just then gets you, right? We know fish. When we fish, that bait, it will see it as something tasty, and then the hook is in its mouth, literally, right? So caught. So mundane happiness, it is like this because what it does is it captivates us. It drags us towards number one. It is like the Pied Piper in that sense. It is dragging you towards suffering of suffering. And it is suffering because it is bait. Although it looks very attractive, it is delicious, but it has this hook. And why is it like suffering and this element of change? It's because in the very first instant, it has the potential to become into suffering with overexposure. And let me give you some modern examples. One is, of course, very obvious one about food, right? If we have a first bite of our most delicious ultra-processed food, like chips, it's very tasty, right? And then you take a bite and thing, and then if you have one packet, two packets, and by about the fifth or 10th packet, you are going to feel quite sick, right? And in fact, when I was a student at Cambridge, I ate Weetabix non-stop, maybe for 5-7 years. And after that, I can never eat Weetabix again. I just reached that limit. So, but something of change is like that from the beginning, it has that potential to change into suffering with overexposure. And I'll give you another very modern example, is falling in love. I'm sorry, I'm going to put it out there, I'm a nun. I know that I'm not supposed to, but I'm going to, because I've had these experiences myself, I can relate them. So that time, it's like blissful. Even the trees, the leaves have a wind where they don't have a wind and all that, right? Everything is shiny, It's delicious, it's attractive, but there's a hook. And that overexposure, you give me a survey of people who have been together for a while and then see if that has not changed. I may not directly say that, I'm not saying that all relationships necessarily turn into like something, but it is a fact that they have the potential to change into something very different. Right? All the divorce cases in urban India, same as in the West or anywhere, and also, so much else, right? So, and we can take numerous other examples, the job we really wanted, the PhD, the accolades, the labels after you get them, and then in many of us in India and Asia, our conditioning is such that jump to the hoops. Good university, good degree, then more, then where is your next job, then what is the label, do you become like a professor, then dean, then vice chancellor, then emeritus. And though when you reach every new thing, right? But then after, like, it doesn't seem like, I remember the feeling after I got my PhD, it just didn't seem like, oh, that's it, like kind of thing, though it's just a label in a way. And yes, it's very handy, yes, I learned a lot and it's allowed me to do many things, but did it really, change it? So you see that a lot of what we went before, we really feel it's going to change everything for us, and then actually when we get it, it could be a material object, it could be a person, it could be an experience, it could be anything, then somehow it may not just think about it and think about whether this, because this is, we all experience it, but it's not that easy to identify as something. But now, in this philosophy, they are not even bothered about the first two. Now, the real big cheese is number 3. And this is really the one that is driving the other two kinds of, and it is because, and we will come to this, it is the ground of the other two sufferings. It is the mastermind. What is it? It is really pervasive conditioned suffering. This is really referring basically to self-grasping ignorance, and I'm going to go into that more in detail. But essentially, this is the one which pushes us, our afflictions, contaminated karmas, everything that keeps us bound in this cycle is this self-grasping ignorance. It takes away our freedom, and loss of freedom is basically living. We experience that in many ways, and for those of us, even at a mundane level, we haven't, like, unlike the 8 million Tibetans living in Tibet and all, we haven't experienced what it's really like to live under authoritarian regimes where we have no freedom, right? Like now, even Hong Kong and all countries, places, and really how much people value that. They may be doing something or not doing something, but just the value of freedom, right? And actually, the Buddha, when he was talking about suffering nature and the previous field, it is this level. It is not really the other two. Next slide, please. So now, like, this is, I'm quoting Venerable Lapsa Rinpoche. He was a great teacher. He set up these institutions like Institute of Buddhist Analytics and Saga College, and he literally gave his life, for the Dharma, amazing. So he says, pervasive conditioned suffering are the 5 aggregates themselves, a result of karma and delusions as their presence permeates the existence of all ordinary sentient beings equally, and because they are the basis of the unremitting experience of the other two suffering. So what is our 5 aggregates? It's literally our form and our mind. In essence, in a nutshell, form, feeling, discrimination, computational factors, and consciousness, but we can distill them into these two. And these are both the result and the basis of the suffering, So we will come back to them, and then there's a very beautiful verse on reflection on the ways in which transmigratory because we are circling in samsara. They resemble the perpetual motion of a paddle wheel, sucking endlessly and relentlessly. So like a paddle wheel, It's much easier to go downwards than to come upwards to higher birds. It's much easier to go down, and there is that. And when you really think about this, when you apply it to the self, it induces renunciation. So I was saying earlier, renunciation is not giving up the good things of your life. It's not about giving up your cappuccinos and your at home and your, whatever the comforts. That is not the point. It is really about renouncing your miseries or your sufferings. And when we think about this in the context of other people that just like me, all of you and even animals and all sentient beings, everything which possesses the mind, they are also experiencing. I was thinking about it the other day, The Guardian. I read the British newspapers because I love them, and so I'm an invented free reader. And there was a story about a small, these orca, like a whole pride of whales, or I don't know what the term is, but they were hunting this seal, and the seal was surrounded by these 8 orcas, and it was full of fear, and anyway, it jumped onto the reporter's boat, and it survived, but the reporter was saying that, you don't interfere with the natural world, so the seal jumped onto the boat, but then again, once, twice, then the whales, there were 8 of them, and they were circling, right, because this is their lunch. So they were, then they created waves, because that's how they hunt. So the seal fell again into the water, and again it rushed up, and then finally it survived. So she said, normally, I feel sympathetic for the whales, but this time I was rooting for the seal, right? But this is also our condition in many ways, and therefore, when you think about other beings being the same kind of suffering as yourself, then you have a basis for generating compassion. So, next slide, please. Now, as his word says that, listen, now Buddha was not a masochist, okay? He's not carrying on talking. Buddha सबको दुखाने के लिए ये नहीं कह रहे थे कि दुख का क्या नेचर है, प्रभाव है ना? ऐसे करना था तो उनको तो क्यों कहते हैं? क्योंकि अगर उसका कोई सुझाव नहीं है, there is no point, right? If there is no solution, why talk about suffering, right? Because then it is just being masochist and torturing people, right? But here says, and it's not even really for Buddhist practitioners, it's secular in the faith. The development of wisdom is also very important. And here I mean wisdom which realizes shunya, emptiness, the ultimate nature of reality. The realization of shunya gives you at least some kind of positive sense about cessation. So cessation meaning that yes, I can put an end to my suffering. I don't need to have it going on and on. Once you have some kind of feeling for the possibility of cessation, then it becomes clear that suffering is not final and that there is an alternative. If there is an alternative, then it is worth making an effort. If only 2 of the Buddha's 4 noble truths exist, suffering and the cause of suffering, then there is not much meaning, right? The first 2 noble truths, suffering, truth of suffering, truth of cause of suffering. If these are there and there's nothing you can do, then why talk about it, right? We are just perpetuating our misery. So no point. But if the other 2 noble truths, that is the 3rd noble truth, cessation is possible, and the 4th, what is the path to that cessation? If these 2 are there, then it is worth thinking to realize the nature of suffering, that's why I'm talking about it this morning, and to think about emptiness. Because of all the teachings of the Buddha, Shunyata, it is the only liberating path. Every other thing that we do is just a factor for the ripening or the gathering of merit or generating positive potential. The only liberating factor is wisdom. So it's worth thinking about what is this wisdom. And today I'm proposing, because I said 8 verses of mind training is all about compassion, right? And what sets apart this tradition and therefore is very appealing for secular, modern, scientific people is why should we practice compassion? You ask me that after we are sitting here in the 21st century, look at the state of the world, and you are telling us this morning that I need to practice compassion. I'm sorry, everybody in Mumbai will take advantage of me. And then I'm just going to lose whatever little standing I have. I'm sorry, baby. Goodbye. So I'm going to propose that the reason for practicing compassion is your own happiness and your own well-being. I'm going to start. That is the ground. Because as I told you that I'm not making moral arguments here. This is good, that is bad, we should do this, we should do that. Because I myself also do not believe in that kind of, But if you think about the nature of reality, then there may be an argumentation for practicing compassion that is extremely stable. It is related to your own happiness and your own internal potential. And it requires no religious belief, no grounding in anything. Next slide, please. So now this process of coming into conditioned existence, right? And this was basically summarizes. So the great first century master, Arya Nagarjuna, and he was really the one who is said to have unfolded the Buddha's teachings on emptiness to the fullest potential. He was predicted as coming into being also for his purpose and everything. And he has this verse, ceasing of contaminated actions and afflictions leads to nirvana, or we can call it fearlessness. I think nirvana, like karma, has a lot of meanings in India. Some hippies with patchouli incense and you're wearing your t-shirts and going around Goa. So we may not use the word nirvana, we can also talk just about fearlessness, right? So ceasing of contaminated actions, afflictions leads to fearlessness. Contaminated actions and afflictions arise from conceptualization of inappropriate attention, which in turn arise from the elaboration of self-grasping inherence. It is the wisdom of emptiness that brings an end to illness. So there are 5 key points here. I've just been telling you about sufferings and miseries. So there are 5 points to remember. That first is the sufferings or miseries that we have, right? How do they come into being? Contaminated actions, which contaminated, as said, basically means that they are colored by afflictions, right? So actions, they can be physical, they can be verbal, and most important, they can be mental, because even the physical and the verbal is going to be finally driven by mental, right? So there are these 3 kinds of actions. Afflictions or mental defilements, or we can use negative emotions, there are many words, but these are basically negative states of mind, and the definition is the presence of which disturbs our mind. So we all have experience of many of these. Anger, jealousy, hatred, covetousness, greed, ill will, there's countless, and we can identify. Inappropriate attention is a deceptive mind which gives false and exaggerated characteristics, qualities to an object. So it's like, you go shopping in a mall in Mumbai and you think, this is the best bag in the whole world. So that attribute of the best quality, or like I gave the example earlier, you fall in love with someone, this is the best human being to ever walk the earth. And 2 years later, when you are just filing for divorce, the worst person in the world. Right? And you see the bitterness of which people part and then how the children are torn apart. This is inappropriate attention. First, you go to one extreme, that the sun rises and sets from them. And next, after then, other extreme, that they cannot even be a single positive quality that they ever had in any dimension because they are just the worst. Inappropriate attention. This is an example of inappropriate. And the ground, as I said, is this self-grasping ignorance. It is this misconception of the nature of reality as being objectively existent on the earth. Next slide, please. Now, the way one can use this verse to see how we come into our conditioned existence and how we can exit. It's like a kind of a little verse that summarizes everything. So, we are experiencing involuntary conditioned existence because none of us came, I imagine, at least I never chose this present birth, I'm here, right? And so I'm experiencing it, and whatever sufferings I'm undergoing. The contaminated actions are the immediate cause, so the contaminated actions here. And in this very life, we have undertaken so many of them, right? Maybe we haven't killed, human beings, but we have killed animals, we steal, and there are so many other actions we may be undertaking, right? Even physical violence, so many other things. The cause of contaminated actions is afflictions, right? So I'm not going to go and, beat someone unless I'm having anger or something, right? There has to be some negative state of mind that is driving that action. So that is the friction. The underlying cause is this inappropriate attention. That this is, like I'm saying, you exaggerate the qualities. Oh, this is the worst person, worst situation, or conversely, this is the best possible, computer, and I have to have it. Those exaggerating the quality. And the final ground is the self-grasping ignorance which misconceives objects to be objectively real, inherently real, and physically real, from the object independent existing self. So if you look at the way that this works, basically self-grasping ignorance leads to inappropriate attention, leads to afflictions, leads to contaminated actions, leads to our misdeeds. And so, like intelligent people that we are, if we wanted to stop this cycle, rather than tackling, you can also tackle each of them like we can and we do, right? But they are slightly more temporary solutions. The final ground, if you can cut this ignorance, smash it to smithereens, then everything that is based on it is also going to disappear. So, this is why the wisdom of emptiness, which is the direct antidote to this self-grasping ignorance, is so important. Next. So here we are. There is a mind, or we can even call it a subject, right? That's with us all the time. We all have. And there is an object, right? And I'm proposing here that ignorance, Tenzin Woesel, self-grasping ignorance, is the mind that misconceives the object, right? And I am saying here that self-grasping ignorance in particular, it is defined as a mental state whose apprehension of the object does not tally with the reality. So the way I am apprehending the object does not tally with the reality. Next slide, please. Now, this shopping mall analogy is basically taken from Venerable Geshe last teaching, because self-grasping ignorance, as I said, it is hard to identify. Even we are experiencing it is hard to identify, let alone, tackling. So it is. So now the analogy for self-grasping ignorance is like the creator of a shopping mall. Okay, so the creator of a shopping mall, their job is to go find the location, build the mall, and then stock all the shops and the designer. And now even in India, rising inequality, so those malls, we need to have all the best of the world designers, and there's some handbag there that's worth like a whole year's salary of the Blinkit driver, all that, right? So those malls. Self-grasping ignorance, the mind is projected, created, right? And it really, sets it up. And then along comes the shopper, right? Which is all of us. And shopper is the self-centered attitude, self-cherishing attitude. So what is the self-cherishing? There are two levels. The grosser level is I am more important than others. Right? And there are countless examples. Even in our dreams, we are the center of our reality, right? In our dream also, my dream is around like I'm studying in Italy, I'm in Mumbai, like we are all our own Hollywood stars, right? So self-centered attitude, I am more important than others, and whether we articulate this or not, we have this feeling, right? Something, I am more important than others. That's very grosser level, like coarser level. So, but subtler level, okay, maybe I'm not more important, but I am very important and I'm kind of indifferent to the rest of the world. So two levels. The coastal level, I am more important than others. You know, I need to, if I go, oh, if I like, you know, now even today, if I also like in everything from our food to our habits to fighting with siblings, friends, partner, colleagues, I am more. And obviously, there's a logical consistency, inconsistency, and this tradition is grounded on pure, hardcore logic. If everyone in the world thinks they are more important than others, it's not going to work well. It's not only Donald Trump who's thinking he's more important than others and Elon Musk. It's all of us as well, right? I'm more important than even in my household. You know. And I want to really, you know, and I want to relate this. I am more important than others. This has been reinforced and solidified by disciplines like economics. The individualism, homo economicus, my ability maximization. Gary Becker, he won the Nobel laureate in economics in 1992. What was his proposition? That even within a family, each one is maximizing the utility. So right now, family I'm staying with Sanjita, Preval, and Jambu they have. Now in this family, everyone is maximizing their utility. Gary Becker's proposition. Sanjita is maximizing her utility, Preval is maximizing, and even the cat, because it is a mind possessor, is maximizing, you know, Jambu my utility, what is my utility? My sleep, my afternoon nap, my food, my this. And he won a Nobel Prize, Chicago School of Economics. And I'm sitting here before you because today, yes, I so much appreciate education. I have benefited. I love studying. If I was younger, I would do now a formal degree, many multiple more. But these disciplines, and I taught this previously, if you watch a documentary called Chicago Boys, it is not about rap artists. It is about all the training that these South American, Chile in particular, Chile, these young Chilean students who went to Chicago, they learned this kind of I am more important than other, utility maximizing homo economicus economics. And then they go back, and then the kind of problems they create, overthrowing governments, this, that, liberalization, all this. And today, the world that we are seeing, where Thomas Piketty is writing about rising inequality, intra-country, inter-country. You have 10 billionaires, first trillionaire has come, Elon Musk. That trillionaire controls media, technology, money, all our programs. They have more money than any governments, more money than each sector. All this. This world is created by such people and more organized. And then, like I'm saying, that's the grosser level. The subtler level is okay, I may not be more important, but I am. And then I can just ignore everything. And how is it going to work? Even MAGA, like this whole notion of protectionism and all, this notion is built on this America is more important than everybody else. White people is more important than everybody else. This religion is more important than everybody else. Upper caste is more important than everybody else. Man is more important than woman. Human being is more important than animal. And you know, we can just carry on and on. So therefore, I really feel that, you know, when you think about this, so this is and you know, even when we think of the violence in the world today, I'm teaching a course called Great Powers and Non-Violence as Principle and Strategy, and it is with respect to China and Tibet. But it can be with regard to any great power and the one it has colonized. And here we are, human beings, 3 years after COVID, we not learned any lesson. Again, we are back to our old tricks. Worse, the kind of suffering we are inflicting on other people, weaponizing water, food, all our great veterans institutions post World War II, because why? They actually went through the World War, they were in the trenches, they experienced suffering, right? So they created these very good institutions like UN, United Nations, World Health Organization, International Court of Justice, IMF, World Bank, always so that people don't ever, we all go in harmony and we don't go around doing all this, right? And all of that is out the window. And all our treaties, women and children are not collateral damage in war, all this Gaza. What is watching? 18,000 children, 67. I'm not taking a position, even on the other side, under great loss, right? But as people like Judith Butler and say, is it necessary to respond to some violence with or violence? Because I am more important than you. And if I'm a leader who thinks like this, then to pakka, good luck to the Bachara population. I don't think everybody is thought of like Benjamin Netanyahu or similarly. All our leaders today, I would say majority, very few. Jacinda Ardern is now writing about empathetic leadership, right? But His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all have been talking about this for centuries, right? And tomorrow I'm going to speak in Pune about how his practice of non-violence that Tibetans have put on them. It's not that all Buddhists were just going around the Tibetans were quite warrior, everything, but His Holiness has said non-harm is non-negotiable, no matter what. But is this easy to practice? No. And when is it not easy to practice? When the aggressor has destroyed or killed 1 million people, destroyed 6,000 monasteries, forced lamas and nuns to marry, destroyed all the artifacts, your language, your culture, 1 million now in colonial body foods, DNA testing, all this is going on, and still you are able to practice. So then that kind of person is qualified to teach 8 verses of human. So after we discuss all this, then we will reach there, then we will see that what is that we are really talking about. But this, I am more important than others, and at least if I'm not more important, then I am extremely important, and I just am least bothered about anybody else. Right? So this self-centered attitude creates a shock, right? And this self-centered attitude is very critical because without it, like if the mall is there, there is no visitors, then it's kind of, it doesn't matter, right? So self-grasping ignorance without the self-centered attitude, which is not that. So self-centered attitude, and both ways. If self-grasping ignorance never created a mall, then even the shopper has nowhere to go, right? So our plan is to destroy the creator of the mall, metaphorically speaking. And then later our self-centered attitude, meaning after lunch. Today we are in a rush. So one thing I wanted to say to you, many of you may have heard, it's this teaching is because next life you will not get the teaching and say it's a blessing you don't practice every day, something, secret, and now this very secret, so we of course love to go secret and then you are the special one. These teachings, today what we are talking about, in Bodhicharya Vatara, this 8th century teacher, Bodhisattva Shantideva, whose practice we will talk about that in the last session if we reach there. So he says the holy secret of exchanging self for other. So why were these a secret? Because they are so against the grain of ordinary thinking that some beings can actually develop a little bit of aversion or they don't think it's at all possible. And in order not for them to create that karma, to have a little bit of shock about the level of the teachings and what they are proposing, exchanging self for other. So here I'm not saying that Nikki is going to become me and I'm going to become Nikki, right? But I'm going to say that I'm going to start cherishing Nikki's interests the way previously I cherished my own interests. So is this possible? And these teachers are saying it's not only possible, it is related to your own utmost happiness and fearlessness. And these are the holy secret. Because, and that's today in the modern language, I'm calling it the radicalism of our time, right? Because God thinking, radicalism is, Che Guevara, where he's supposed to go, and like Vietnam War, 1960s, Marxism and all, that's all gone. Like the radicalism today, you may also be the ladies got gumption, she's really talking about compassion. Look, our media is not compassion, countries, everybody's feeling realism is right in international relations, economics, it's all about neoliberal economics and this really carry on. So let's see what is the reason for it. Next slide, please. So now, as we said, if we are intelligent, that five steps, right? Self-grasping ignorance leading to inappropriate attention, leading to afflictions, gross affliction, leading to contaminated actions, leading to our suffering. If we really want to get rid of our suffering, we smash the ground, right? So smashing the ground, the way to get rid of self-grasping ignorance once and for all, eradicate is the wisdom of ignorance. This is, as I said at the beginning, what sets apart the Buddha's teachings from other traditions. And why is it important, as His Holiness says? Because it is what is the only liberating path. It is going to allow you to get rid of that ground, everything stacked on it, gone in one go. It's like in a modern day, we would have a demolition of a building, right? You just detonate it from the bottom and everything comes down in one with a new thing around it. So the detonator is the wisdom of evidence. Everything else is just trying to smash one floor at a time and do it like that. So we are seeing here that basically what is this self-grasping ignorance and other analogy apart from the mall could be again 5 points. And I'm sorry to give you so many points, but this was also what attracted me to this tradition because of my extensive sort of love for academic study and detail in particular. I don't like Langri, this is that. Here there's a lot of definitions, a lot of points, so there's no confusion. So another analogy for self-grasping ignorance is that it's like a mind's projector, which is projecting things, right? Point number 1, you are projecting. Point number 2 is you are unaware you are projecting. Point number 3 is you believe it to be real. Point number 4 is you get affected because you believe it to be real. And point number 5 is you react. And this is what keeps it going. So this analogy, so 5 points, what is this conditioned existence like? Your mind is projecting. I am unaware that I am projecting. I believe it to be real. I get affected. And I react. And that then is like the cycle, right? And why is this a problem? Because this projection is a problem because we don't have freedom, like in our dream. Like last night, I would really have liked to dream of His Holiness and my teacher, and everybody like saying, oh, it's going to go great, and it's okay, and but I can't choose that dream, right? Maybe I have even a better dream than that, or maybe I have a worse terrible dream, right? That I've got a cancer diagnosis with 4 months to live, or some other dream, And this lack of freedom is absolutely misery, right? So these are also analogies for. So now, when we see things as objectively real, like this is objectively real bar, it's on the object, independent, it's coming from the object. I am unaware that I am projecting. I'm unaware I'm projecting. I am very much believing it to be objectively real on the object. Then I'm getting affected and I'm reacting, right? So like this, it's like believing a movie is real, right? How many of us have been to a movie hall and seen a very, very interesting movie, right? And we get totally caught up, especially some kind of, emotions and people are crying and everything because we believe it to be real. So then we have emotional stuff. But the minute we realize, even in a movie, that, oh, this is a movie, right? Then that whole store and everything stops. So these are the analogies. If we can stop our self-casting ignorance and just eradicate it from the root, we can stop this entire charade, right? So you know that, okay, this is all coming from my mind. No worries, total freedom, right? And that gives you an ultimate kind of, fearlessness. So in fact, if you see great teachers, masters of these teachings, you will see that they display a certain kind of confidence that is unshakable because of this kind of knowledge and understanding, and then of course realization. Next slide, please. So now, there is one thing that there are these two extremes and there are two questions. Before we get into any discussion on emptiness and all, we have to ask ourselves these two questions. And these are like the kind of gateways. Whenever you hear the words emptiness, you could be sitting anywhere. Emptiness does not mean nothingness, because this is a very, very common misconception. Emptiness का ये मतलब नहीं है कि कोई चीज नहीं है. बिल्कुल है. अभी मेरे को चूड़ी मारोगे तो मेरे को लगता है ना. तो ये बहुत रियलिटी. एम्प्टीनेस का ये मतलब नहीं है कि कोई चीज नहीं है. बिल्कुल गलत समझ है. तो शून्यता के बारे में हम बात करेंगे तो बात करने से पहले हमको दो चीज पूछना है. ये चीज सब है या नहीं, और आंसर आपको देना है कि है. क्योंकि अगर आप बोलोगे कि नहीं है तो हमारा रिस्क है कि हम निहिलिज्म में. फिर हम बोलोगे कि क्या सब इट्स लाइक इमेजिनरी, राइट? Why do I need to even go to the conventions of the world or practice kindness or do anything? And it's absolutely nothing. It's like imagination. And that is not true, because I can wish that His Holiness is sitting here and Vishwa is sitting here and everything, but we are not, right? So, whereas if I pinch myself, I'm very much feeling the pinch. There is functionality in the world, there is cause and effect, everything exists. So we have to ask two questions. Do things exist? The answer is yes, very much so. And if you ever go for any of these philosophical teachings from this perspective, that they tell you that things do not exist, you be in an academic setting, the university, they be Nobel laureate in philosophy, you may please raise your hand and challenge them. That is really what the teaching. So do things exist? The answer is capital yes. Do things exist objectively? The answer is capital letter no. So then you get rid of the other extreme that things exist purely from the object, absolutism, permanent, other kind of, scenario. Next slide, please. So this is also a visual way of remembering that do things exist. So whenever you talk about emptiness, even if you're talking to yourself in your mind about emptiness, ask yourself these questions. Do things exist? The answer is yes. Do things exist? Objectively, the answer is no. Without passing these two dates correctly, you are not qualified to talk about emptiness. Because we have a danger of falling into either the nihilism that nothing is there, and nothing exists. And this is what Thought and I this is the biggest misconception. There are a lot of people who read this philosophy because they have not studied it and it is complex, right? And you cannot read it for 1 hour and get understanding. So this is likewise, and similarly, and then the next question is, but do things exist objectively? And answer is no. Next slide, please. So then I will stop here for Q&A, and our session 1 is done. So after lunch, when we are all feeling very sleepy, objectively sleepy, then we will look at the 8 verses for training the lunch. Thank you. So I welcome any questions you may have, and please, I have been a lifelong teacher and student. So I think questions is how we learn. There's no question that's silly enough. And without question, there's no learning. Yes.
Sorry.
So you just mentioned that two things exist, yes, but two things objectively exist, no.
Could you explain this with an example? Okay. An example. So the example would be that, like, I very much exist. Like, let's take the example of, this khata. This khata definitely exists. Do it exist? Yes. Right? So we are taking away the possibility that it is not existing. Nihilism, it is existing. And it is very much a khata. Validly, we can see all of us, it is a khata. It is not a cat and all these things, right? It is a valid object. It is there. Two things exist objectively. Objectively would mean that it is something that is objectively khata on the side of the khata, independent of the mind. And that is not its reality. Although it appears to us as objectively real, I also am seeing it coming from the object, right? And I also apprehend it. I also am believing it to be objectively real. But what we are saying today is that neither this appearance nor this apprehension tallies with the reality. The reality is that this kata exists independent origination based on causes, conditions, and based on my computing mind, and based on the label kata, and dependent on many factors. So, dependent on many factors, the kata originates. And that's how it becomes subject. That's that. And dependent. It is not independent, self-supporting, from the side of the object, inherent, existent, like all inherent, intrinsic, what are the others? All of these. It is dependent on university. Thank you.
I have a question. I've been following the Nichiren Buddhism for many, many years now. We're now not following it anymore. But the thing, is that you mentioned that I was not born, I was just, karma came into being because of maybe impurities or whatever it is. But the thing is, viewing life from this perspective isn't it very fatalistic? Whereas the Nichiren Buddhism says, that why not we hold this karma? Yes, I have this. But I have this concept, I overcome this and show the actual proof. By talking about emptiness at all, because even I practice mindfulness meditation, and I know that too much mindfulness, also makes you very passive.
Exactly.
So isn't this, also this concept of course, realizing emptiness, contains, it may be good, but then once you're there in the real world, you have to, let's say you have to play politics, you have to play mind games, all these things. And let's say, if I come from that perspective, then why not, become like, let's for example, bully the bully, let's be a bigger bully then. From the mind of compassion. So everything makes sense. Even the mall makes sense. The mall builder makes sense. We have to destroy the mall itself. Even if someone is buying a bag worth 10 lakh rupees handbag, and if by watching that handbag, if someone is inspired, oh my God, this person had nothing but he has worked hard, let me also do that. So doesn't everything, even your desires, the basis for the desires, has certain kind of importance instead of just negative. So even the question is this, why not? It's like, isn't this too realistic?
Okay. So I'm going to take a couple of, what's her name? Aditya. So thank you for that wonderful question, Aditya. So firstly, Nichiren Buddhism, and again, as you say that Nichiren Buddhism is very precious, what I really know of it. The mantra, in fact, is the homage of a sutra on emptiness. Nam Moho Rendikyo is the homage verse for a sutra on emptiness. So that is the preciousness, and that is what it is really about. So that's one thing. The second thing, fatalism. Now, the words that I said about we are definitely born, we are here, conditioned existence, we are all here. What I was mentioning is that we haven't come voluntarily. Like I did not have the freedom per se to choose my parents, and in that sense, because I have not reached that level, right? And whether I chose to be human or a cat or a dog or all, I don't think I have that kind of freedom yet. I came in voluntarily, whatever shape and form, right? In that sense. So I was talking about that involuntary because when we talk about, I have used the word conditioned existence to be secular. But if we talk about the terminology, like let's take samsara, right? So it has three realms: desire and form, formless, right? And we all are desire and beings. And those who achieve higher meditative concentrations, form and formless, right? So that's the setup there. Now, should, and can we go beyond this desire? Like when you are very correct. So when I said that we destroy the creator of the self of a mall, what I meant is that we destroy seeing it as a being objectively real. Remember, I'm talking about destroying self-creators. I'm not actually destroying the mall itself in the sense that once we see that it comes subjectively, that it's my projection, it's coming from my mind, so I am the creator, then I gain absolute freedom, right? So the mall is still there, all items is there. Similarly, when I'm getting rid of self-centered attitude, I am not getting rid of, self-confidence. There is a big difference between thinking I am more important than everybody and then still settling for I am very important to just thinking, yes, I should have self-confidence because I have a precious human life, I can achieve a lot, I have infinite potential, and we all have equal potential. And in this context, I want to mention that Baba Sahib Ambedkar ji and others, why have they come to this philosophy? Because the ground of the Buddha's teachings are we are all equal in two respects, equal in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering, including animals and all. And number two, equal in our potential. There is no inherent inferiority, superiority of gender, caste, color, creed, religion, X, Y, Z. So Baba Sahib and all came to this because from that point of view they adopted Buddha's teachings, right? And Buddha's teachings in that sense are very radical because the ground of equality is this. To say fatalism, now there are two things in it. Yeah, one thing is that I would say that there is no determinism here. In fact, because what replaces the notion of an external creator is the notion of cause and effect. And cause and effect operates at two levels. One is the natural law of karma. Like right now, I was telling it's winter in Mumbai, it's very nice weather, it's not too humid, right? There's no intention and karma operating per se in particular seasons, morning coming to night, night, morning. Natural law of karma. And then there is the karmic law of cause and effect, where intention does matter, right? Why am I right now not sitting in Dhadi and taking days of, whatever, doing resetting? Why am I sitting in a beautiful hall waiting for a nice lunch and I'm just being looked after? All this, what is the difference? And in fact, why I got into Buddhist philosophy when I came back from Cambridge, I got quite sick. And I'm born in a Sikh family and actually quite a secular liberal family where religion is not even, and then myself being Cambridge and all this. But when I started going deeper into the nature of suffering, illness, all this, I was not very satisfied with the answers about the notion of how we exist. Personally, from my mind view. I think for others it's different, we each have our own disposition. And as Buddha himself, in his own teachings, he gave many different teachings for people of different dispositions. Right? And today, His Holiness being the best representative of the Buddha's teaching, His Holiness is very anti people converting on anything because he says that wherever you're born, you should try to stay there. Later in life, when you're dying, you may have confusion, right? But there can be cases where people change because of their different dispositions, right? So there I feel there is no fatalism because my cause and effect, my actions, in fact the amount of empowering and agency that this philosophy gives you, if I can change the fact I'm not negating the color. Shopping mall is there. I'm just changing an opinion that this exists entirely from the object where I don't have freedom, to saying that yes, it very much exists, but it exists 100% subjectively, and yet it is not imaginary. I cannot change this into a kg of gold just now in front of you. It has its cause and effects, and it came into being dependent on cloth, on the weaver and the thing and the color used and the dye and the everything, and that is how it exists. So there I would say fatalism is absolutely not, it is quite the opposite. Because it puts the kind of agency completely on you that in fact your actions, Buddha said two things, you will not experience the results of karma you have not undertaken, and karma meaning in the lexicon of English just pure actions or intention, not those, Indian understanding, karma, nirvana, incense, patchouli, all those understandings, karma is action. Physical, verbal, mental. You will not experience the results of actions you have not undertaken. And second, actions you have undertaken, you are definitely going to experience the results, like both ways. Right? So we have full agency. And then also I remember once when I was living in England and there was a big, I don't know if you remember, there was a big fever over 20 years ago, or even more. And then, somebody who was differently abled, and they felt very offended because they said there was a suggestion that it is my karma to be differently abled, and how offensive this is. But here, in fact, we are saying, Aditya, what I'm saying is that all of us are in this boat, right? There's nobody who's, I imagine, in this audience who's come to listen to me who has exited samsara. And so we are all in the same boat, right? And if I take an interview of all and you take my interview, we all are experiencing our own kind of suffering. And in fact, the richest, Mumbai has some of the world's richest people, right? Guarantee you they have their own sufferings. As this one says, richer people have more mental sufferings, poorer are more physical, and none of us are out of it. So what we are saying here though, as this one said in that verse, that if you are going to gather here to talk about suffering, neither you want to nor me, there's no thing to get out of it, right? Like that 8th century master said, if you can do something about a problem, why worry? If you cannot do something about a problem, why worry, right? So if something was something I cannot do anything about it, then no point doing it, then I would rather go to Bandra and have some, whistle pound. But we are here because we are saying, yes, it is possible. And I'm not even going to say Buddhism. That is an ism, right? Post Buddha's life, I've just written an article for an Oxford magazine on how, frankly, it is very debatable whether Buddhism is a religion. Because Buddhism, I would say, has three parts. There's the religious aspect, which is whatever, that's people's personal business. That I'm in robes or doing whatever, that's my business, right? And then there's the science and the philosophy. And for science and philosophy, science is coming. Physics is coming close to what Buddha said. They are not identical, but they are converging. And because we academics are always so like decolonization and knowledge, and I'm the creator, again, like original mind, this one is plagiarizing. I have to say that physics is slightly plagiarizing the Buddha. Because Buddha was there first. Right? In terms of this ontological reality, what physics is today saying, in the last 2,500 years. They are the later comer, right? And then on top of that, so therefore I feel that in this context, it's what I want to say. There's complete remote control is in your hand. Yeah. And that's why without those two gates, nobody has a right to talk about anything. Because if you are going to say do things exist and the answer is no, then you need to go and study it much. Yeah. Right.
So you use this term renouncing misery, which is stuck with me. Because whenever I think of renouncing, it is about not paying for my rights for some possessions I am renouncing my house or job, something good. misery is like, okay, I have to overcome misery, my anger, my jealousy. There's a certain amount of helplessness with misery. Whereas renouncing good things, there's no helplessness. So for me, these two are very contradictory. So can you please elaborate on renouncing misery? Overcome misery is, I'm comfortable with that. But renouncing misery, rattled me.
What's your name?
Priyanka.
Thank you. Wonderful question, Priyanka. So yes, renouncing misery, why I said that, because you see people, and now especially I'm also an ordained person, and they have this question. And because we are Indic traditions, for us renunciation has a connotation of asceticism, giving up. And I myself, to make you all laugh, whether you believe it or not, I hope these are not recordings for now. But I was somebody who loved perfume, who could smell me from 6 kilometers. And in my own little way of being an academic and all, but my little silver jubilees and my eye to be whatever I really, and as I'm saying, I would not be persuaded by something being morally good or bad. And also trading as an economist, like basic needs, right? There's all this discussion on, what is the basic minimum income we need to be happy. And now so many economists are working on happiness, like Richard Mayer, all these people who previously worked on traditional areas like macroeconomics and all. And again, I wrote a piece for this Bhutanese journal called the Group Journal on, this concept. So I'm not going to argue against basic income, and income is very important for our well-being and everything, right? And we haven't experienced poverty, so that is in its own way very, very difficult, right? And so I'm not at all suggesting. So, but when even people ask me, and I ask myself that today, because some of those things just fell away. So, but others have not, and there's no requirement to. To be honest, in this part, specifically Mahayana Buddhism, which is like thinking about the well-being of all and the aspiration to become awakened for the benefit of all sentient beings. In fact, it's not even a very problem to be super rich and all, because if you use that for the well-being of others, there is a very famous case of Vivek who was a renowned, rich, super rich, you could say the first trillionaire at the time of the Buddha. And his sutra is amazing because how he helps and does. So there's no thing here about renouncing in that sense, what we associate with renunciation, or now from tomorrow I just have to eat one oat in the morning and then everybody in the house doesn't have to and here I am, and then you start. But why I'm saying renouncing our miseries, Priyanka, because that's why I put up that verse, ceasing of karma and afflictions is nirvana or fearlessness or whatever, And that whole kind of little formulae, those are based on inappropriate attention, which in turn is based on self-grasping ignorance. And if we can detonate the self-grasping ignorance, all of this collapses. So there the thing is that our miseries, they result from a certain misconception of how things exist. And therefore, when I said at the start that the compassion that is being able to be generated in this philosophy and tradition is so profound. Why? Because, like in that same text that Acharya Chandrakirti, he says that there are 3 levels of compassion. One is just seeing sentient beings, that level of compassion, renunciation for myself, because I feel that, I have so much suffering, in my life. And that same thing, when I turn to all of you, I think, then I feel compassion, right? That's one level. The second level is seeing things with an understanding of impermanence, right? In 50 to 100 years, nobody in this room is going to be there, right? And yet we don't live like that, we don't act like that, we harbor that, right? So with this understanding, again, a being generates compassion. But the deepest level of compassion is with an understanding of emptiness. Because, why? Because I have an understanding that, okay, when we all get to that level, that things don't exist as they appear, as we apprehend them, like objectively. And this is the source of our misery, it is the mastermind of our misery. And yet we don't know that. Until we meet the teachings philosophy, we don't know that, then it's very hard to identify, right? So this is why Buddha stayed silent for 49 days, but then out of compassion, he talked, right? So that level, Priyanka, with that understanding, you can enjoy your Gucci, Chanel, your ice cream, your cake, your whatever. If you see it as subjective behavior, you know, not seeing things as objective behavior. Because the ground of our feelings of, kind of miseries is this mind projecting, unaware and projecting, believing it to be real, getting affected and reacting, right? And I'll give you an example like this. It works great if things are going my way, right? Say that I'm falling in love or something. Then I have no problem. Mind projecting, believing, unaware, everything's so great, right? May this last forever. But the day tomorrow I'm in some difficulty, right? Like I'm going through some terrible divorce or some financial difficulties, court cases, people are fighting in the family, this, right? Then, if I'm aware that mind is projecting, mind is projecting. Remote control is in my hand. Why am I getting into this world? Then automatically it's going to change everything, right? You get fear. So in fact, because of these questions, I think after lunch we are actually going to do some more about emptiness, and then last session, if you are still hanging around, we will do 8%.
That was the last short question. So my question is for Cherish. Also, ways of have a broad understanding of the most I understand karma at an individual level. You may do, let's say, Gaza. Is there something which is there? And thus, the philosophy behind something matter with its students.
What's it?
Sriram.
Sriram. Thank you, Sriram. That's a wonderful question. So, karma is a massive topic, right? Karma, more simply understood or defined, is just intention or action, and we may go into that a little bit more. But so in this philosophy, there are three types of phenomena. One is manifest phenomena, one is hidden phenomena, and one is very hidden phenomena. So manifest phenomena is like we are in this room, like manifest everything that we are seeing, lunch, we are going to eat, and all. Hidden phenomena is things like emptiness because you need to go through inference like logic, and and very hidden phenomena, it is hard for ordinary people to see. But the reason given for accepting that is because the Buddha's the first two manifest and hidden are provable. Therefore, he is also valid with respect to the third. So when we start trying to trace people's karma, either as a group or individual, that is not possible for us ordinary Jews to do. But we can, your question on individual and collective karma, definitely for sure. There is both. So there is, say for instance, our all gathering here today, there is some collective karma that we are here together, all this, right? Individual karma, what we do, like even, so they say that these are very degenerate times, and we don't need to know the Buddha's teachings to see that. We can see it in our own words and actions, and we can from our own perspectives, right? So the thing is that in these degenerate times, if people practice certain things, it's like a rocket because the times something that you may practice for one day now, maybe at another age when things were more less degenerate, it could be like equivalent for practicing for a year, right? So the thing is that we are born alone, we will die alone. So our individual karma, we have total freedom over that. We have total control and agency over that. How I choose my body, speech, and mind to act is my personal business, right? And it's in my willpower, my control. Collective karma, of course, we are this rising cancer, autoimmune, pollution, wars, things. And at our level of like my level of being a teacher, and also like even in my disciplines of IR development, all these things, right? Look what world 21st century. 20th century there was enough wars, world wars, we thought we would get somewhere, and now look how we are living and where we are going to get it, right? Including, I mean, I think technology has many good points, but it has great dangers, and we are not being discussed, and we have enough resources to feed and clothe everybody, but we are not doing that. And so these things is a collective karma. Yes, for sure. And then there are various divisions of karma, like projecting and competing karma. Like projecting, like for example, what Aditya was saying, but like I never had a choice, I mean, to become human, but right, like say for example, Sanjukta and famous cat, Chandu Singh, his projecting karma was to become a cat in this life. But his competing karma now is superb. He joined a very loving, happy family. In his initial time was very rocky, very rocky. But now it's become very good and long that is the case. That is the case of competing karma. He may have better conditions than many human beings.
Thank you so much, Venerable, and really good questions that coming. Just a few quick announcements. One, the lunch is almost ready, so give us 5 minutes, so we can be cautious and thinking about this approach of change. Yeah, please be within this room with us earlier announced within the don't take it outside. That's one. Second, right outside the door, there is in front RO water if you want to refill your bottles, and aside it on the right you have the restrooms. बाहर जाके सामने आर वाटर का पानी है उसके बाजू में बाथरूम्स है और खाने की प्लेट्स यही रूम है